This lecture video is about an introduction to complex numbers, and so the first thing we want to talk about is what a complex number is. And so every once in a while when we're doing something we end up with a square root of a negative number, and a complex number is to deal with that. So by definition, the square root of -1 is equal to I. And so if we take this, -1, square root of -1 equals I, and if we were to square both sides of this, it would give us, so this square root and this square would cancel each other out, and so it gives us -1 is equal to I squared. And so that's how we get this fact that I squared is equal to -1. So complex numbers are normally written in the form a plus bi, where a and b are both real numbers, and b is not equal to 0. When you're performing operations with complex numbers, you should rewrite anything that has a negative number under a square root as a complex number. Then perform operations treating I just like it's a variable, and then when you're done, replace I squared with -1. So we're going to rewrite these examples using I notation, and so we have the square root of -9, and we know that the square root of 9 is 3, but because this is the square root of -9, it will be 3i. Okay, so the I is coming because we're taking the square root of a negative number. In example B, we have the square root of -18, so we could rewrite this as the square root of -1 times 9 times 2. And then if you wanted to separate things out, we would have the square root of -1 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Square root of -1 is I, and the square root of 9 is 3, so we would have 3i times the square root of 2. Our next example, this time the square root is outside of this, or the negative sign is outside of the square root, and so this would just be -2. So no I, because this negative is not underneath the square root like it was in the first two examples. Our next one here, we have 5 times the square root of -20. And so again, we can rewrite the square root of -20. So we would have 5, and then we can rewrite -20 as -1 times 4 times 5. So we have the 5 outside times the square root of -1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. And this part is 2i. And so we have 5 times 2i, so that gives us 10i, and then times the square root of 5. Now we're going to use I notation, then multiply or divide as indicated. The first example, square root of -3 times the square root of -7. So we would want to rewrite these using I notation, and square root of -3 would be I times the square root of +3, and square root of -7 would be I times the square root of +7. And then when we multiply these together, we would multiply the i's, giving us I squared. And then you could also multiply these roots together, so that would be the square root of 21. I squared, remember, is -1, so this would be -1 times the square root of 21, or just negative square root of 21. You don't need to have the 1 in front of the square root there. Our next example, 25 times the square root of -1. So square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of -1 is I, so we would get 5i. In our next example, we have the square root of 4, that's 2, times the square root of -64, and so that would be 8i. And 2 times 8i is 16i. In our last example here, we have the square root of -81 divided by the square root of -6, and the square root of -81 is 9i. And the square root of -6 would be written as I times the square root of 6. And so these i's will cancel, giving us 9 over the square root of 6. And we never want to leave square roots in the denominator, so I'm going to rationalize my denominator by multiplying by the square root of 6 on both top and bottom. And so I have 9 times the square root of 6 on the top, and then square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is just 6. And there's one more thing that I need to do, and that's to simplify, because 3 divides both 6, it goes into there twice, and 9, it goes into 9 3 times, and so we will get 3 square root of 6 over 2. And you can't simplify the 2 with the 6 because the 6 is underneath the square root and the 2 is not. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.